Hello guys, this is Mike from Shamina's Workshop. Here we have our latest install. This is a KR Sabers Lukero. This is fully installed with a Goth master chassis, metal crystal chamber, NeoPixel, Proffie, speaker, recharge port, right? The whole works. We'll fire up first just to get that out of the way. Oh. It does have a kill switch, which we can access from behind the speaker. So the speaker is removable. And then we can see in here, we have a kill switch. We have access to the Proffie on the top. We have the USB, as well as the SD card, the switch, the recharge port on the bottom, and then at the very bottom we have speaker connections. We also have two magnets which help to hold the speaker component to the main chassis. So we enable or turn it on by the kill switch, which will turn it on. But then we also need to put the speaker back in and situate it so that those speaker connectors right there go into the bottom two speaker connectors, which could be a little bit of a challenge. You don't want to force it. You don't want to force it in. There we go. So we can see how the bar is lined up with these pommel. So that'll give you a little bit of an indication of how it gets inserted. So let's turn it on. There we go. And we got it in. And then we can put the pommel cap back on. Okay. So up here we have power and activation. The D-ring does have a tendency to trip the flash on clash. So one of the easy ways is just to hold the D-ring. I've even seen people put a piece of tape here so that it doesn't, it's a more gentle knock when it does hit the hilt. And then we have flash on clash. And we can see here we do have, I believe this is, I purchased this from Vaders Vault, and then drilled a hole in the center so that we can get the shine through to come through. But this is a Vaders Vault Blade Plug with a Space Windu blade side adapter that has some NeoPixels already attached to the PCB. Great pickup. I know there's a few other options out there, but this is very well, reasonably priced, works very well, easy to install, so I went with that option. The blade plug, there is a retention screw, so we can use remove that retention screw, take the blade plug out, and then put in a 1-inch NeoPixel blade. I'm not going to demonstrate that. This saber was actually used in my other videos demonstrating our NeoPixel blades. So you can, I'll put a link in the description, or you can go look on our YouTube channel. You'll see, you'll definitely be able to see a NeoPixel blade with this saber. Okay, with that said, I'm going to open this. Right, so we can unscrew the top portion here to access the internals. Okay, so here's our Goth master chassis. Brass and bronze are the two different colors, you know, for the crystal chamber as well as the inserts. And then we have just the, you know, 3D printed crystals themselves that are backed by some pixels, 2 pixels. It's wired to mimic the blade or the blade plug, and in order to be able for this to remain functional, as you can see, I turned it on and we've wired a custom Saber shop hilt side adapter along with, sorry if you can't see in there, but we have a blade side custom Saber shop PCB adapter on the inside of this grenade section. So we actually have 2 of these. We have one here, but we also have one up here in the emitter. So that just allows me to, even while the blade is on, or the hilt is on, right, I can start to twist, and once we get connectivity in the grenade section, oh, that's real annoying. But we can see once we get connectivity, all that reestablishes. Okay. So that's a nice little feature, right? You'd be able to display this on the shelf just as it is. Let the blinkies blink. Or maybe even come up with a nice solution for a stand where you could display. You know, if you wanted to display this in 2 pieces, sort of like the Graflex 3.0, kind of a similar concept, maybe where we display sort of like that. Okay. I'm going to leave it so that we can just look at some of these colors. I have a couple of fonts. That was lukerotj. I believe that's a KSith font. With a backing track. The next is the Balance. Another version of the Balance. And then we have all the core fonts. Smooth fonts. With different blade styles. Smooth. Luke Skywalker. Okay. The Balance. The Balance. Okay. What else is there to go over in here? This PCB card does slide. It's pretty snug because the way that Sabers designed their control box, there's 2 little white plastic screws that you can turn left, you know, in or out to apply pressure to the clamp card. This way it doesn't move. You don't need to use tape to hold the clamp card in place. The white screws just apply enough pressure if situated in the right position. And also, you know, so it kind of lifts up the middle of the clamp board just a little bit, which really makes it sort of like a seesaw, which allows the buttons to actuate, or, you know, allows the top of the clamp card and the bottom of the clamp card really to get a nice press down on the buttons. With that said, you can remove the clamp card, slide that out of the way. There'll be 2 screws, which are used to hold the control box to the hilt. If you slide that out of place, take those 2 screws off, you can remove the control box. The wiring, there are 6 wires going into the control box, 3 for the LEDs and 3 for the power buttons. And there's a little quick disconnect inside of the control box. So if you ever had to disassemble or you wanted to take the chassis out of the hilt, you can do that simply by moving the clamp card out of the way, taking the 2 screws out, disconnecting those 2 connectors that are in there holding the wires, and then what you would do is pass the wires down through the hilt. There's a hole in the hilt under the control box, and then you can slide the chassis out. I wouldn't suggest doing that. It is designed that way, but I would consider that more for maintenance in the future if something had to be changed or fixed or repaired. But really not designed as a removable chassis. Okay, with that said, what else do we need to showcase here? The middle of the chassis, or I should say the crystal chamber, is connected to the PCB holder, as well as the main chassis body using threaded rods. I believe it's a 440 threaded rod and 440 nuts. I had to locate some pretty small nuts. The standard size nuts obviously wouldn't fit very well. But again, if you for some reason had to disassemble all of this, these nuts and the threaded rods would have to be undone. But really, there should be no reason for that. This is not a button. The KR Sabers hilt was not designed for these to be functional buttons. The buttons are in the clamp card themselves. And these are just standard, probably 3mm. I forget if they're 3 or 5mm. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, a KR includes square LEDs as opposed to round LEDs. So you have those 2 LEDs, not NeoPixels. And then there's a sequence in the ProffieOS that allows for the blinking pattern. Okay, I think that's really everything I wanted to go over. And what I generally try to do, because the chassis is floating, there's nothing holding the chassis in place. What I tend to do is loosen up the pommel cap, just a little, not to take it off, just to loosen it. And I make sure that the grenade section is tight against this bottom hilt section. Not, snug, not super tight. I'm not overturning it, just hand tight. And then I come back to the speaker section or to the pommel. And again, then I just turn that until it's snug. That keeps, because there's pressure on the speaker, there's pressure at the top of the grenade section onto the top of the chassis. And so once it's snug on both sides, that chassis does not move. Right? I'm shaking it, and right, I'm not getting any false clashes. There's nothing moving around in there.
Smooth Jedi.
That's such a strange hum sound, smooth swing sound. Okay. Any questions that you guys may have, feel free to comment, feel free to, reach out in private message, Facebook message. And thanks for watching, guys.